Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag Resynced is just around the corner, and the excitement surrounding the game is at an all-time high. I'm counting down the days until I can finally experience everything this remake has to offer. In my previous videos, I revisited the recent Assassin's Creed titles leading up to Resynced, specifically AC Shadows and AC Mirage. But then I realized something. I hadn't replayed the very game Ubisoft is remaking, the original Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. I initially never planned to revisit the original Assassin's Creed 4 because its gameplay is considerably different from what we will be getting in Resynced. But I eventually came to the conclusion that if I truly wanted to appreciate what the remake had to offer, I first needed to remind myself how the original AC4 looked and played. So I went back to my Steam library to re-download the game. The very first thing that stood out to me was just how colorful the game is. It also felt surprisingly strange going back to a control scheme where walking, jogging, and sprinting required more than simply pushing the joystick forward. I guess it had been a while since I last played one of the classic titles. Even today, the movement and parkour are simply fun to play. They remind me of a time when traversal was one of the defining pillars of the franchise and was constantly evolving with each new release. Now, I know there's been plenty of discussion over the years surrounding the Kenway era parkour. Some players argue that it sacrificed player agency in favor of making movement more streamlined and accessible. I'm fully aware of those criticisms, and while replaying the game, I experienced some of those limitations myself. That said, I think most people would agree that it still preserves the spirit of the original systems introduced in AC1. At the same time, it's also fair to say that there was room to expand its depth and responsiveness. The good news is that if you're playing on PC, there is a community-made parkour mod that does exactly that. It expands the movement system by making it more responsive and unlocks much of the depth many players felt was missing. I originally planned on using the mod during this replay, but I ultimately decided against it. I wanted to experience the original game exactly as the developers intended. Even in its vanilla form, I still think the system offers a surprising amount of depth, preserving much of what the classic systems from AC1 to Revelations were known for. For my parkour runs showcase in the background, I chose Havana. You see, while all cities are enjoyable to traverse in AC4, Havana has always stood out to me because of its denser layout. It reminds me of cities like Venice in AC2 or Paris from AC Unity. Compared to other cities in AC4, I simply find more variety to play around with. Maybe that's just a skill issue on my part, but Havana has always been my favorite city. I also want to make it clear that all of the cities are thoughtfully designed. They provide plenty of opportunities for movement, allowing players to approach parkour in different ways. One thing that surprised me was just how easy it is to get into the flow of parkour. You can hold the right trigger and move forward, and you're climbing rooftops almost immediately. This is also where much of the criticism toward the Kenway system comes from. By simplifying traversal, some of the finer movement options from the classic parkour became more contextual or harder to execute. Side ejects and back ejects are still possible, but to me the timing windows are noticeably tighter, and many actions depend on the environment rather than direct player input. I can't help but wonder what this system could have become had Ubisoft continued refining it instead of replacing it. With enough iteration, I believe it could have evolved into one of the strongest parkour systems in the franchise. While we are on the topic of parkour, one aspect I found somewhat inconsistent was the vaulting animations. Edward doesn't always commit to vaulting over an obstacle unless every input lines up perfectly. Sometimes he will simply stop halfway through the motion, bringing all of your momentum to a halt. It's a little difficult to describe, but AC3 handled this differently. Vaulting could sometimes be difficult to initiate, yes, but once Connor entered the animation, he fully committed to it. The animation wouldn't suddenly cancel halfway through, leaving you standing in front of the obstacle. So, while Black Flag improved certain aspects of movement, other mechanics seemingly were left out or not fully implemented. Yet, like many Assassin's Creed games, part of mastering the parkour comes from learning these weird side effects and adapting to them. Overall, the vibrant colors, the lively streets of Havana, and the incredible soundtrack come together to create an immersive experience while playing the game. If there's one thing I can confidently say about Resynced, based on what we have seen so far, is that Ubisoft has done an excellent job recreating that atmosphere. In many ways, they have even enhanced it. I honestly think it'll be a joy just to slow down, walk through the streets, and let yourself get absorbed by the environment. With that, I wanted to leave you with one final thought. No matter how impressive Resynced turns out to be, I don't think it will ever replace the original Black Flag. Beyond the visual upgrades and additional content, the original will always preserve that identity that made Assassin's Creed. Its parkour reflected the evolution of the series at that time. Its story remains one of the strongest in the franchise, and its combat, although another topic of debate, offered a level of variety that many players still appreciate today. Unless Ubisoft somehow finds a way to faithfully bring all of those elements into Resynced, the original Black Flag will always have a place alongside the remake, rather than being replaced by it. Only time will tell what updates, improvements, and additions await Resynced after launch.